Welcome to the Thriving Leaders podcast, where we dive into real conversations that help leaders grow, teams flourish, and organisations thrive. I'm your host, Claire Gray, Leadership and Team Facilitator at Thriving Culture. I'm also the author of Thriving Leaders, Learn the Skills to Lead Confidently, and Thriving Teams, When Teams Unite, Align and Achieve. This podcast is filled with practical tools, tips, actions, and insights that you can immediately apply so you can lead confidently. I interview thought leaders from across the globe. I hope you enjoy the podcast. So there's a lot of noise right now about AI. There's excitement, there's fear, there's uncertainty. And a question many leaders are asking is, what does this actually mean for my team? So today I'm joined by Dawid Naude, founder and CEO at Pathfinder, Australia's leading AFR award-winning AI accelerator, an official service partner to OpenAI across Australia and New Zealand. Dawid is one of the region's AI innovators and educators, known for translating the potential of AI into real-world impact that makes organisations more productive, more creative, and more future-ready. With a career spanning across consulting, technology, and innovation, including playing a key role at Cloud Sherpa's acquisition by Accenture and becoming a partner within 3 years, Dawid brings both expertise, energy to the AI conversation. Dawid, it's such a pleasure to have you on the Thriving Leaders podcast. Welcome.
No worries at all. Thanks for having me.
All right. So for our listeners that might not know who you are and know your story, tell us a bit about your work and why it matters so much.
Yeah, awesome. So, my whole life, I've always just had a bit of a fascination and obsession with playing with technology, getting really excited about it and kind of figuring out how to use it. I'm a massive tinkerer, play with these things, and then really trying to get others to get as excited about it as I do, but like just showing them how to use it and making them get super excited about that over time. So I've always been in the bridge between the tech and I guess let's say, call it a layperson's use of it and getting the most out of it. For me, it is definitely much more than kind of a profession or a job. It's something I truly get like super excited about is playing with technology and then seeing others kind of feel the same way and the impact that it can have for them.
Yeah, awesome. So what excites you most about AI?
One of the most exciting things about AI at the moment, and this even in the last 2 weeks continues to get just more and more impactful like this, is how easy it is for somebody to have a massive impact to what they do every single day without like needing to become a master of that tool, of that platform, of that technology. If you think of, let's take something as simple as Microsoft Excel, there's actually a bit of work that goes into that to know how to use it at the beginning, and then formulas and then eventually macros and things like that. But it can only do like a certain amount of things. Whereas with AI, we're really getting to the point now where, let's take that Excel example. Any person, let's say if you're a marketer, you could say, can you look at all the marketing performance spreadsheets from the last 2 years? And can you come up with a couple of ideas of how we might optimize our marketing spend and get the biggest impact for the next year? And can you model out what the potential ROI could be of each? And now AI is going to go do all of the Excel creation and handling and modeling for you. And you didn't need to know how to do any of those things. And so how accessible it is to the average person is one of the biggest things that makes such an impact. And particularly right now, in the example I gave there, it's AI has hands now, is how I like to describe it. It takes action for you. It's not just you ask it a question, it gives kind of like a written answer, and then you've got to go copy paste and do those things. It really takes action for you now. It creates, it controls your browser, it can control your computer, it can access a lot of the systems that you have access to as well.
Mm. It's pretty crazy. I even saw someone post on LinkedIn how their SaaS platform had gone up in price. And so overnight, one of the project managers ended up writing code using AI and it replaced this platform that they've been paying money for. So what is actually changing in the ecosystem? You said something's happened in the last 2 weeks. What's different?
Yeah, so at the end of 2025, Google released their new AI model called Google Gemini 3. And that was quite shocking in a positive sense in how powerful it was to create code. And so you've been able to use AI to write code for quite a while, for a few years, but it's been very much for a programmer, for a software engineer. And it's also been quite hard. So you use it, it creates it, then you run the code, and then there are bugs. And then you ask AI, sometimes literally fix the bugs, and then it goes and fixes them. But one of the big leaps with Gemini 3 was how fast it was, and also how accurate it was on the first attempt, what we call one shot, like a one shot prompt. It would figure out what it needed to build it, it would look really good, run it. You'd actually see a test in the browser and it would be accurate. And that's just become more and more powerful over the last couple of months. What happened in the last 2 weeks is there's been a tool called Claude Cowork that is from a company called Anthropic, that creators of Claude. Cowork is kind of the bridge between an AI chat tool. Think of your ChatGPT experience, you chat in there. And then you have the coding side in the world of Claude that's called Claude Code, in the world of OpenAI and ChatGPT that's called Codex. Cowork is kind of this bridge in the middle where you give it access to a folder on your desktop, and say you're trying to create let's say you're putting on a marketing event and you want to have a beautiful landing page that everybody can see. And maybe it's even just internally. In fact, very real example for us, we're putting on an event next week. We've got a list of all the people that are coming. We've been able to literally in the space of 10 minutes create a beautiful internal briefing for our team that are going to be there, it's a beautiful rich HTML page that has pictures of each person. It says their work history. It says notable things about them. It looks fantastic. But all it required was literally saying, here's the spreadsheet of all the attendees. Can you now go and research this and create an internal briefing for us so that we really get to understand these people before we join? And it looks fantastic. And this can be done by somebody who is the least technical person on the planet. And because it's creating things in this folder for you, it's nothing technical. Like you don't have to know how to like run a server, which is typically what you need to do with coding. You're just like opening the HTML page there. Or if it's not HTML, create a PowerPoint pack. And AI used to be terrible at these things like creating PowerPoints, but now it's actually very good. And when you combine it with the things like the web search and that beautiful profile pic of each person, their interests, their background, notable facts, and all of that. And so the fact that anybody can do that on a license that's like $20 a month is pretty phenomenal. Cowork was available only on Mac first. The big thing 2 weeks ago was the Windows release of it as well. And it can also control a web browser as well through the extension. And so that just kind of takes it to another level as well.
Yeah. I think the power and the impact and how quickly AI is moving is exciting, but also a little bit scary as well. And I was actually reading an article from the CEO, like a quote from the CEO from Anthropic about publicly saying that half of all entry level white collar roles will be gone in the next 5 years. And people don't know that that risk is coming. What's your kind of response to that? Or if you could look in your crystal ball, what do you think the employee market's going to look like going forward?
I know it's such a cliched response. It is impossible to tell. So, some at the moment, AI is very, very good at doing a lot of things, and also it is starting to get much better at stringing those things together. So, even though AI can write an email, can do a spreadsheet, can create a website, can do all of these things 1,000 times faster than a human can, the reason why there hasn't been any kind of noticeable immediate job impact is because a lot of these things need to be stringed together, and so you have to they're kind of a workflow that needs to be managed end to end. And so now that these agents are able to string these things together more, I think the potential impact of this will be bigger. One of the things that I think the model creators and model providers like Anthropic and OpenAI and that don't really grasp is that there's an enormous amount of inefficiency in every single office worker's day, every single day at the moment. And it's not so much about removing all of these office worker roles. We see it as much more freeing up capacity to actually do things that matter. You know, if you're a sales rep, your customers don't actually just want to chat with a chatbot. They actually want to build a relationship with you and your company and that. But you're really bogged down on how much administration you have around that. And so one of the really encouraging things that we've seen with our customers is every customer very quickly looks at this as a growth engine, not a cost efficiency engine. They're going, I'm ambitious, I have so many things I want to do, but I'm bogged down by all of these inefficient processes that really stop us from creating new products, going to new markets, doing those types of things. There's also tons of new jobs that will come out from this, just like we saw from the internet, from the smartphone revolution. Just the new industries and all of that that'll be created from this will be absolutely massive. I think the jobs that have always had the opportunity to be automated but haven't. So you're thinking like offshore call center roles, those types of things, they're definitely very easy to remove now. But in terms of like long-term job impact, it's really, really difficult to tell. But we have typically seen the relationship between automation and jobs is more automation has typically led to more jobs. Like we've never had more automation and unemployment's never been kind of lower. So over a long enough horizon. So yeah, but it is hard to tell.
Yeah, I think it makes it harder when CEOs of big businesses are making these big statements as well. I guess it creates that uncertainty for people. So, what are the capabilities that people need to develop? Because hearing you talk about coding, and I am someone who can put my hand up and say I can't code, but it sounds like now I don't necessarily need to have that skill. What I've personally noticed with AI is we still need to have a certain level of experience to be able to overlay that critical thinking and the quality check. Whereas if I have no coding skills, I would assume that there's no bugs in what's being delivered to me as well. So, what are some of those capabilities that we need to look at going forward?
Yeah, so these tools are incredibly smart, but there's a certain level of intuition and understanding of your role that AI just really doesn't have. And there's a certain rapport that you have with your team and customers and that AI just won't have. One of the first capabilities is actually rethinking of AI as a productivity tool to a intelligence or strategic tool instead. Particularly for leaders, this is highly, highly important. Everything that you do in your company or anything that happens in your company is downstream from the decisions that a leadership team makes. And so, one of the first things that we really encourage leaders to do and show them how to do this is to use AI as a strategic thought partner, as a strategic decision helper. And even something as simple as AI is really like having an impact in my industry. Let's say if you're a lawyer or an accountant, consultant, something like that. Can you interview me and then help me understand what are the opportunities and threats for my business? That is a far better use of AI as a leader than, help me draft this email or summarize these meeting minutes and that, which is these very low level tasks that we've seen people tend to gravitate towards. And so the first capability is to think of it as actually change your thinking, think of it as a strategic partner to make better decisions. It can be something as simple as we've just completed a capital raise. What are the 10 likely best uses of funds for this? Can you do a deep research, do a market scan of the types of issues in the industry, types of effective uses of funds? What are 5 difficult questions a board might ask me about this decision? What are the 5 things my customers are feeling at the moment that I might not be aware of? Those things are far more important than the low level productivity. The next capability is using AI to actually learn AI. And so that's one of the number one tips is to be honest with AI. Say, look, can you interview me, help understand me, and then find the top 10 ways I could be using AI within my job, within my company, within my industry. The the coding and all that, you don't have to, you just need to start playing with it, know that it's there. It's still like in that example that I gave of creating a website, there's still a step then of like publishing the website. And there's still a step of making sure that if I publish it, that only my company can get access to it and not others. And but what if I want my customers to have access to it, but not it be on the open web? So there's still kind of these little barriers to take it all the way to the end that you could do two things. Like one is you can actually figure out how to do that, or just wait. Like there'll be a publish button that says, okay, do you want to do it internally or externally? That's just going to come. Like we keep seeing the convenience being improved of these tools. I'd say use AI to the maximum of what you're comfortable within your current skill set. Like that's already a huge, huge, huge gap. There's so much opportunity there. But the two things people are lacking is like inspiration, not sure what to use it for, and then capability. There are a couple of power user tips that you need to know how to get the most out of these tools.
And so, like, what's the best way to know how to get the best out of the tools? Like, obviously, you've said use AI to teach you, so that's great to get feedback from AI. But I guess, are we only seeing one side of the picture? Like, how do we get kind of more diverse perspectives too?
Yeah, so there is, okay, if there's just a couple of foundational things. Now, if we do this podcast, let's say 6 months from now, it might be a bit different, but this has definitely been true for the last 2 years, or even it's less than that. Let's say the last 18 months. Think of AI as there's two different brains that you can access. One that is very fast and very efficient, and another that is it thinks a lot harder. It's a lot better in its responses. It doesn't make nearly as many mistakes. In fact, makes way less mistakes than a human does. But the trade off is time. You might wait 10 seconds. You might wait an hour, depending on the complexity of the task. And so there's two types of AI. You have instant or base models, and then you have thinking or reasoning models. That's an enormous, enormous thing for everybody first to understand. If anybody who runs a team knows that the number one indicator whether something's going to get done properly is who you give it to. Like that's actually the number one thing. Now, of course, nobody has the luxury of just an infinite number of people and they can make the decision every time. So that's where good coaching, instruction, management, and all that comes in. But imagine if you just had a team of guns that every person knew what they had to do. So that's what you need to do first is get into the habit of using thinking or reasoning models by default. They're far better. They're just slower. The way you do this in a tool like ChatGPT, click the drop down where it says GPT 5.2, flip it to thinking. In Claude, click on the extended thinking button. In Copilot, drop down to thinking model as well. Gemini, it's thinking or pro. So they all have these options of actually accessing the thinking models. That's the first step that'll immediately make a massive difference. The second step is don't think of prompt engineering. This is a field that has been very important up until, I'd say, maybe a year ago for end users, where you did have to know how to instruct AI really, really well. But with the combination of these thinking models and then telling AI to first ask you questions, that makes a massive difference. So if you literally said, hey, it's my first podcast that I'm going on to, I've never been on one before, can you help me prepare? That's going to give you an okay answer, not great. This is where somebody who teaches prompt engineering will tell you, oh, well, you need to give the goal, the context, and all these other things. It's very fatiguing if you're doing that all day, every day. So instead, say, I'm going on to my first podcast ever. Can you help me prepare? But ask me 5 questions before answering. Then it's going to come back and say, okay, great. What's the podcast about? That's the first question. The second one might be, how long is it? Have they sent you a briefing note or something that you can give me first? And third question is, it's actually going to give you all these questions and you're very quickly going to answer them. And now you're going to get a far better answer. This is becoming easier as well now that these tools have access to systems if you enable it. So, for instance, in that example, if you enable the Microsoft 365 connector into a tool like ChatGPT, the first thing it's going to go do is go search to see if it can find the podcast in your calendar or in your email. Now you don't have to tell it that, but you'll wait probably 30 seconds whilst it goes and does that task. And so it's becoming more convenient for these things to answer you a lot more accurately. But those first two tips, I think, is a great place to start, is thinking models and ask me 5 questions before answering. And one of the first things you should do is say, flip it to thinking and say, AI is moving really fast. I'm trying to understand what it means for me and how to use it. Can you ask me 10 questions and then help me find the top ways to get started? I think you'll be blown away at just how remarkable the outputs are that you'll get back after an activity like that.
Really, really good advice. So one of the things that comes to mind hearing that example of connecting your ChatGPT with Microsoft 365 is where is our data going, the privacy and confidentiality of being able to access your SharePoint and what risk comes with that. How should we approach that risk to privacy and data?
Yeah, so the risk is it's not in the place that people think it is. So these tools have consumer editions and then business editions. So the consumer editions, they cost anything from free. Now there's an ad supported tier coming from ChatGPT, and then up to kind of $20 a month is what these consumer edition tools often have. The With the consumer editions, by default, particularly on the free ones, you'll be opted into sharing your data so the model can be trained on your data. Now, what that means is people are worried that if they like put in their tax return and say, can you help me prepare for my tax or something like that, the next day or a week later, somebody will be able to say, look, how much does David earn? And ChatGPT will just tell them that. It's not at all how it works. What they're trying to actually understand is, am I having to ask like 10 questions and have this back and forth conversation with AI to get an answer? Because if AI was able to see enough people's conversations about like doing their tax and trained on that, you'll be able to get like an immediate answer with the first question and not go, oh no, add this, have you considered that, blah blah blah. So it's trying to train on your usage and get that information, and so it scrubs and removes all of that information. But why take the risk of that in the first place? So you can just opt out of having your data trained on the consumer editions. Just a little toggle, improve the model for everyone, flip it off. And this is no different to anything else in tech. If the product is free or cheap, it's not actually free. It's You're just not paying for it with money. You're paying for it with data. You think of Facebook, think of Instagram, think of LinkedIn. You're trading data for value so that advertisers can advertise to you based on your information. So that's how tech has always gotten you to pay for it, is with data. Now, why would you open yourself up to that risk in the first place, or that arrangement? So if you're doing it for your business, you need to be on the business tiers of these tools. As soon as you're on a tool like Microsoft Copilot 365, ChatGPT Business or Enterprise, Anthropic Business or Enterprise, or Claude, they have all of the certifications like SOC 2, Type 2, ISO 27001, everything that you're used to using every day across your other tools. They already have those certifications. And so it doesn't train on your data. Yes, there's risk for sure. Like, there is still a small risk, just the same as any other software as a service platform, be it if you're on Salesforce as a CRM, that very sensitive customer information that's not being hosted on your server. It's Salesforce's server right now. And that's why these certifications exist, is that they have particular controls and auditing and that in place. Now, of course, if there's a nefarious actor or something goes bad, yes, for sure, there's still a small risk there. The bigger risk is actually, so you can get very comfortable with that, with data security, privacy. We now have sovereignty in Australia for most of the platforms as well. If you're big enough, you can have all your data hosted in Australia as well. But there are options. If there are still things that you're concerned about, you can use a different tool for that that's just locally hosted, or you could even use a feature that's called temporary chat, where use AI as soon as that chat is closed, it kind of disappears. But the bigger risk that we're seeing emerging is where it's almost like so now that these things have access to so many systems, and now that they can take action in these systems, if you're somebody who's not particularly organized, not somebody who's particularly structured, somebody who's lazy, in the past, you probably don't have a team around you, or you're not leading a team. And so therefore, it's very hard to kind of have this big amount of damage or impact that you might make if you were to just delegate tasks across your team with bad instructions and access to these systems. But if you were to say something like, let's take this podcast, let's say I gave AI a transcript of this podcast and said, can you now contact everybody in my email who is go through this, contact everybody in my email who you think might find this relevant, the things that they want to hear, see, whatever, and then send an email. Now, if I just give AI access, there's a feature called act without asking, which has all sorts of alerts associated with it. It's now taking action in these systems on your behalf. And if you think about it, let's say in that example, let's say we discussed a customer here which maybe we shouldn't have discussed or something like that. Maybe there's some sensitive information, and all of a sudden, like I've just now sent a whole lot of sensitive information to like 150 people, which without really checking that that was going to happen or having a guardrail to stop it. And so it's more around AI taking action on your behalf without you being clear on what you're trying to do and giving it permission to, well, actually insisting that it does that without asking you because you just want to get it done and you don't want to check it. That's one of the emerging risks that we're seeing is the more powerful AI is with access to your own systems and taking action on your behalf and you not checking it, that it can open you up to all sorts of risks and issues. One final example there might be, let's say you have some kind of contract or quote that you want to email a customer and you've maybe used ChatGPT to figure it all out, and then the customer information is in your CRM, but the information in there is terrible. Like maybe it's like really out of date and messy, and you're saying, can you update the CRM with this contract and then email it out to the customer? But the email address on the CRM is incorrect. It's actually of a different customer. And you say act without asking, and you would have picked this up, but you've asked AI just to proceed. That's the type of emerging risk that we're seeing.
Yeah. And I'm also noted like even like more and more meetings are being recorded. Does that cause people to hold back, or do we forget that we're being listened to and then the meeting notes get automatically sent out to the whole team? And maybe because someone was in the room, you would have said things differently if they were in the room, and all those risks that come with it too. The other thing that I find from a leadership perspective, which I find most concerning because I work with leaders and teams, is we stop having conversations. We ask AI rather than having the conversation with our peer because we want to ask a question, draw on their expertise, ask their advice, or even share that we don't have the answer and we need help and be a little bit vulnerable, which builds relationships too. But we're maybe not having those conversations like we used to. What are you noticing in respect to how teams are interacting with each other and the shift to that team dynamic?
Yeah, definitely. So just quickly on the meeting one. Okay, so one thing everybody needs to be aware of right now is that it's very easy to be recorded without knowing. And so you just need to, from now on, assume that everything you're saying is being recorded. Like, because the new tools like Microsoft Copilot and that tells you, Zoom tells you all of that. But there's lots of new products that do meeting transcription and recording and notes far better than those built-in tools. And all they need to do is listen to your system audio. And so it listens to what you're doing, what you're saying on this is coming through the system audio of your computer and your microphone. And so just everybody needs to just assume that they're on the record. Depends on the state how legally enforceable that is if something ever did go to court and you didn't know you were being observed. It's different by state. But I think it just sucks like that because you want to speak freely and openly. If everything's on the record, that's really. I often use the example of if you go for coffee with somebody and they pulled out like a little dictaphone, a little tape recorder, and put it on the table. It's a very different conversation. Like, I mean, it sucks.
Yeah.
It's very different because we're still people at the end of the day. But that's something to be aware of, and I don't really know how we tackle it because it is also so nice to be present on a call and not to have to write furious notes the whole time.
Oh,
Like, and
definitely.
so,
I find it
uh,
amazing, like in my coaching calls, like the transcription at the end, because I was like a
yeah,
prolific note taker and just having that. And then even when I do a face to face, not having that transcription now, it's like, oh, yeah, like, yeah, getting so
yes.
used to it.
So just a hot tip on that one. There's a tool that I'm personally obsessed with at the moment. We've got no commercial relationship with them, but it's called Granola. They're just cooking with magic out of the UK. They've just made this the most beautiful transcription note taking tool I've ever seen. It's insane.
What
But
makes it
anyway,
so good?
yeah,
Like,
it's just it seems to just okay. So you can do templates afterwards of how it summarizes the call. So you might have your own coaching notes template that you really like to summarize it, but just the accuracy, how much it understands the depth, and just the little interactions, it's like little animations and user experience and things like that. It's just magic.
yeah.
They've gone, and this is a big thing in AI. There's a lot of AI tools that will get you like it does it 90% well. And then there's a whole lot of specialist companies that are going the last mile on all those little things. And that's why you might have something like Copilot that does do great at meeting transcription, notes, recordings. But you have another tool like Granola that's all that they do is
Really?
make sure that all the little edges of that is perfect. Okay, on the leadership one, this is such an incredible tool for leaders. Now, if you're a bad leader, is it going to turn you into a good leader? Of course not. It's going to make you a worse leader. Like, you're gonna fake being empathetic. Like, and that's way worse. Like, than actually being empathetic is using AI to pretend to be empathetic or something like that. So here's how leaders should use it. And I say this from experience because that's how I use it, and also some of the leadership teams, how we work with, use it as well. So the first thing is to use it to honestly reflect on being a leader. And one of the ways to do that is ask it to interview you to understand your goals, ambitions, insecurities, vulnerabilities, like your ambition, all of that, and to get a real understanding of that. And it's going to come back with a really good picture of that. The next step is then to say, look, can you now go through my last couple of years of email and calendar and all of that to get an understanding if how I'm behaving and operating is remotely aligned to my ambitions and goals and that. And because your calendar tells a real story, as does your email. Like if you're working on respecting boundaries with your team and you're sending emails at 1 a.m. every night to them and Teams messages and that, like AI is going to be very good at keeping you honest with that. So that's the first part. The second part is I use it for daily kind of planning and also for reflection. And I'm very honest with it. I've told it the things that I'm working on and that. And one of the things that I found it remarkably powerful recently is actually building empathy, like legitimate empathy, not like trying to rewrite an email to come across as empathetic, although it is helpful for that because words do matter and can be misinterpreted in emails. But I've found that understanding where my team is coming from and things that they may be experiencing that I'm not aware of, it's been very, very helpful as a tool to do that. So if we're working through something and they've raised something as an issue, and I'll sometimes even check with this personal reflection agent that I have that I've actually built in Claude. It does this quite well. It'll say, oh, hang on, look, probably think where they're coming from with this is this type of angle, and maybe this is a better thing to not send to them over an email, to actually have a call about them next week. And so it's been very helpful and helping you solve kind of leadership challenges that you might have, work through things. One of the things that like it picked up with me is my sense of needing validation from people, almost like an insecurity, right? Like, and well, is an insecurity, like valid, and it labeled it validation seeking behavior. And it's
So how did it get to that point? So it's like going in and looking at all your emails, your transcriptions from your team meetings. Like, what data is it drawing from to make that conclusion?
so initially it was just a long, like hour to 2 hour session at a coffee shop where I was just being honest with it. Like, in this case, it was just first day of the Christmas holidays and it'd been an epic year and I was very burnt out and I just wanted to reflect. And
Is it a verbal conversation that you're having with AI?
you can have it verbally.
Yeah.
You can either dictate it in, but in this case, this was just like all in text at a coffee shop. But
Yeah.
definitely, like my morning reflection this morning was a verbal one, just dictating into it. It's very good at that. So this was just a super long thing. I was just like telling it everything. I was just being incredibly honest with it, and eventually, it started forming a bit of a picture. And was telling it the things that like I was doing, things where I felt really strong, areas where I felt really weak, and um, it came back with quite a few things. And one of the things it said is there's I need to move from being a founder to being much more of a leader because we'd grown from like one person to over 30 people in an incredibly compressed amount of time. And I was still hyper involved with everything, hyper driven and all of that. And it's like, okay, and it even gave it a name. It said this is a thing called founders syndrome, where you're still like hyper driven and all of that and unaware of the impact that that's having on the rest of the team. So it was remarkable at how it kind of unearthed these insights with me through this process. Now, I'm still longing for like a great executive coach, a human to have these things with, but I can't spend half an hour with that person every single morning. And I also can't spend 15 minutes. I can't quickly give that an email I might be sending to my team to say, hey, can you quickly check this to see that I'm coming across the right way? I can't do that with that exec coach 24/7. So that's where it's very complementary in those things.
Yeah. Look, you make me feel like my role might be redundant as an executive coach now, but I think that
Not at
there's
all.
power in both.
Oh,
So,
definitely. 100%. Yeah.
so if you're a leader listening to this, like what are the tools that they should be using? Like what are your top AI tools? If you're a leader that works in a big organization that already has tools,
Yeah.
or maybe in a small business or you work for yourself, like what would be your recommendation?
Yeah, it is. It does shift over time. And so at the moment, there's three dominant model providers. So you have OpenAI with GPT, and then the app is ChatGPT. Then you have Anthropic with Claude. Then you have Google with Gemini. People might ask, what about Copilot? Copilot uses GPT. It's an app. So Copilot's the app. GPT is kind of the brain and engine behind it. The same one that is in ChatGPT, but they perform very differently for different reasons. What I would recommend is become a power user of ChatGPT. That is the start. That's the best starting place. Like there are some tools that might do certain things much better in narrower areas. If you look at something like Google Gemini, it's very good at image, it's very good at video because they have all of YouTube as a training data set and Google Images and that. Something like Claude is very good at many things, but it can't do images or videos at all. Whereas ChatGPT can do all of them, and so it can do voice, it can do video, it can do absolutely everything. It's incredibly broad, and they're usually first to bringing groundbreaking innovations to market. So even the thinking models, they were the first ones to actually bring that to market. That kind of cutting edge research. It's also as a business leader ChatGPT now has like 1 billion weekly active users. Your customers are using ChatGPT. Most of them using ChatGPT, right? So like it's important that you know what your customers are experiencing when they're using these tools. So do that as a baseline. Now, me personally, I use ChatGPT. ChatGPT is a fantastic business workhorse. It works really hard. It can do great at the like spreadsheets and research and all of these things. With Anthropic, with Claude, they have put an enormous amount of work into the style, the taste, the tone of Claude, the personality of Claude. The person who's behind this, she came from like a bit of a I think psychology background, philosophy background, and actually like she's kind of led the whole program to the personality of Claude. And so I find it's a much better personal coach, mentor, tutor thing to bounce that off with. So I do a lot of work tasks in ChatGPT during the day, and then I use Claude as this coach, mentor, tutor. And there's quite kind of a nice separation there. But then with Google, with Gemini, I use it for image generation. It's very, very good at that. But ChatGPT is the starting place. Yeah.
Mm. So like an average week for you, like what are you using the different tools for? Like what does it look like for you as a leader of teams, but also a business owner too?
Yeah, definitely. So, okay. Through the day, I use ChatGPT to actually interact with systems on my behalf. So if this is a relatively new feature, you can create a thing called a GPT. That's not a new feature, but what is new is being able to associate apps with a GPT. And so one of your apps could be Microsoft 365, another app could be your CRM, and another app could be Granola, which you can also associate now, like it's an out of the box connector. And we have like a deal ops GPT for managing our sales deals. And if I have a conversation like with a customer, all I need to do is straight after that say, hey, spoke with a customer about these things, blah, blah, blah. Can you update the CRM? It's going to go into Granola, get the transcript, go through my emails, see when the meeting was, all of that, and then go and make the update in the CRM for me. So those types of things I use day to day to help what we call assistant tasks. So your more grad tasks. Then I
And is
use,
that, did you
yeah,
have to build that out with code, or is it just creating like your own GPT that's your deal opportunity and you've just attached them all and given it some instructions and now it just goes off and does it? Or do you need to have
no code.
no?
No
Wow.
code.
Yep.
Yeah, that's very new as well. That's 2 weeks old.
I
Like
didn't
being
even
able
know
to.
about the interconnecting of apps. So I'm like
It's
But like,
2 weeks
what are we
old.
doing this afternoon? Yeah.
Yeah, it is like 2 weeks old, and it's in beta, and it's not perfect, but ChatGPT is very conservative. You will get, almost frustratingly, you'll get, before it takes any action and updates anything, it's going to ask you to confirm it. It doesn't have an allow every time feature, whereas something like Claude does. And I'm pretty lazy with this stuff. So with Claude, with the same thing, I'm just like, allow every time. And then sometimes we get the odd duplicate record popping up in the CRM and that. But
But I actually
that's
like that
perfectly,
it asks you to check it because
yeah,
then you know that
exactly.
what's going in is quality.
Totally. It's a bit of work to do on making sure the GPT instructions are really good in that, but it's worth the effort. Like,
Yeah.
and that's so. A thing for you might be a leadership coaching call GPT, which is to help you prepare for the call and also to help you summarize it afterwards. And so the preparation instructions could be, I want you to go find when last we spoke. I want you to get the call transcript from when we spoke last. I also want you to look at their LinkedIn to see if there's anything that I need to know about there. That, and I want you to draft like the email for me for preparation that I could send to them before the thing. I don't know, something like that. You'll be able to put your own secret sauce on it, but because it has access to these different systems and combined with the thinking, so it'll go, okay, I first need to pull some information out the system, and it'll look at that and go, I couldn't find anything in the emails. Maybe it's in a different system. Like, so you actually see this all happening in front of you,
Yeah.
and that's going to continue to get faster. So that lower level administration, using it for that much more and more now. The second thing is using it to research and understand customers. Prospect or customer research GPT is really important, and you flip it to like the most thinking you can allocate to it, like, so it spends 10 to 20 minutes to research everything about this person, like how long have they been in their role for, what are notable career things that they've been through, all of that, what are the top 3 pain points they're likely to have at the moment, what are the things happening in their industry that I need to know about. We've put a lot of work into our version of this. We even have a little section that says explain what they do to a 12-year-old, and because often it's very different industries and it's hard sometimes to understand, we'll come up with this beautiful analogy. And then even something as simple as, what are the top 5 things that they do and what are the top 5 things that they don't do that people might think that they do. And one example of this was, like, I had a customer that is big, like, plumbing maintenance contractor, and what do? They repair homes and that, but on behalf of councils. And what they don't do is, you can't contact them directly. They work for the council. So when you contact the council contracts them. So even you can see how easy it would be to confuse that. But AI it's just able to, we basically get like a half a page automatically created for any new customer that we're catching up with. So those types of things are very good. Yeah. And then now with Claude Cowork, a lot of time playing with that, building kind of little apps, web pages, all of that. So if I could recommend tools, I would say, oh geez, it's probably going to end up all of them. But I'd say become a power user of ChatGPT. But my goodness, at the moment, sign up for Claude and download the Claude desktop app and start playing with Cowork. OpenAI and ChatGPT, like they are responding very quickly to this, but it's just an incredibly powerful tool. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll have to look into Claude because I was ChatGPT. We use Copilot because we're on Microsoft for a few things, but also I was using Perplexity when I was writing my book because it was a really good research assistant.
Yep.
But I've just finished my subscription. Sorry, Perplexity, but I might look into Claude because it sounds like
100%. Go Claude. Definitely get Claude as well. Download the desktop app and start playing with the Cowork mode on the desktop app. Yeah.
yeah. Awesome.
With Copilot, its real strength is in SharePoint. So the ability to point it to a SharePoint folder and do things off of that is where it really shines.
Yeah. And what's an example of what it could do linking to SharePoint?
Yeah, so if you're somebody who's saying B2B sales and you respond to tons of tenders, you could just have a tender assistant agent, is what they call it in Copilot. And you point that agent to the SharePoint folder and you put all of your successful tender responses in there and tell it, now if a new tender comes in, you could just put that tender to tender response agent, and it'll go through all of the Word documents of all of your previous successful tender responses and do the first draft of what a response could be. Because often it's things like, can you tell me a case study, 3 customer references or case studies of where you've done something like this before, and it might be buried across like 100 proposals, and somebody's going, oh, this sounds like, has anybody got the proposal from that customer that we did like 2 years ago that did this type of thing? Whereas now it just goes through all of that automatically, and a very low burden on your team as well to keep this up to date. It's like all you have to do is make sure that when you submit the response or it's been successful, I want you to put it in this folder. That's all that I want you to do. And then AI is going to look at that folder, and that's it. So that's a very helpful, common one.
Yeah, awesome. So many tips and tools. It's been amazing. So, David, if you could leave our listeners with one message about thriving teams, what would that be?
I think have a real honest conversation with Claude and open up, be honest about like doing a benchmark of where you're at the moment, and then giving you some advice on how to proceed. And you'll probably be really blown away at how helpful it can be. And now there's data that backs this up as well.
Awesome. I want to ask one more question. I don't normally ask that question. That's normally my final question, but it just triggered a thought. So what I noticed, and this is probably going back sort of 6 to 8 months ago when I was writing Thriving Teams, my book, and I was ripping with it about my title of the book, and my subtitle was always going to be called Thriving Teams. And I came up with all these options, and I was like, oh, well, I like my option better. Like I like this for this reason. And then it just kind of kept validating. Do you think there's been a shift? Because we're riffing with Claude, and sometimes it could be validating what we think. You've also heard the extreme cases of the teen that committed suicide as well from riffing with AI. So is there a risk in terms of validating or pushing back, or do you think it's shifted?
It's getting better. So there's ways of measuring these things that are called evals, which is short for evaluation. So when a new model comes out, one of the evals is how prone it is to sycophancy, which is just telling you what you want to hear. And it's getting much, much, much better at that, while still having the very real user experience challenge that it wants to be a nice, helpful thing that isn't a burden on you all day. So if you're having a conversation imagine like as a coach, like if I was seeing you as an exec coach and literally everything that I said, you just challenged me. Like, it's this delicate balance between listening and like teasing things out. So that's what it's trying to do. In the meantime, all that you need to do is like ask it things like, give me 5 reasons for and against, give me 5 criticisms, give me 5 critiques. Where you can get more advanced with this is actually create different personalities as different GPTs in ChatGPT. You can create the cynic, you can create the devil's advocate and things like that, and actually ask them to check boards. Yeah, this is something that we do in some of our board training as well, is create 5 different kind of board personas to help challenge any decision that's coming. There's the optimist, there's a cynic, there's the analytical person, all of that. But it is getting better.
Awesome. Well, I've learned a lot. Thank you so much for your time, David. I really appreciate it.
No worries. Thank you so much for having me on.
Thanks. I just gained so much value from that conversation with David. What I personally gained from the discussion was not just about the tools to use, but how to use them really, really well. I've already been using AI as a thought partner, but today I learned how to amplify that. That's far more strategic, especially as a leader making decisions every day that shape the team's performance and culture. There was also a huge reminder, the fact that we're probably being recorded more than we realise, and how that might change what people feel comfortable to communicate, trust, and psychological safety within teams. I also really love David's perspective on using AI as a daily coach and really getting AI to know who you are. That sense checking so you can lead with more intention. My key takeaway from today is that AI can really amplify your leadership. Thanks for joining us at the Thriving Leaders podcast. If you'd like to find out more about our leadership programs, facilitation, keynote speaking, or executive or team coaching, head to our website, www.thrivingculture.com.au. This is also where you can sign up for our newsletter, where I share useful tips on leadership and team development, as well as our podcast. You can also grab a copy of either of my books on our website. And it's also available on all good online retailers, including Audible, Spotify, and Kindle. If you like this episode, I'd be so grateful if you left a 5-star review, as it helps us reach more people and therefore helps more leaders thrive. Please subscribe.